board's here too, so.
Morning, welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting of May 8, 2025. If we could please stand with the invocation of Pastor Sheldon McKeevery of the New Hope Presbyterian Church. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for letting me be here. I'm new to the community, just under a year, so it's a pleasure to be a new resident, and thank you for the opportunity to pray for us this evening. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that we were reminded that you, in your wisdom, you created government. You created people to be leaders over people, and we thank you that you bless those that lead. And so as they gather today, would you be a blessing to them, to enable them to walk humbly, to serve wisely, to make wise judgments, and understanding that they serve the people of this community the way that you designed for this world to operate. So we ask that in these proceedings today that they would honor you by the way that they would lead, that you would bless their work and the fruit of their labors, that you would enable them to judge wisely in the sense and work together in harmony, work in unity, and work to seek the welfare of this city. So we ask that you would guide them in all that they do, enable them to manage their home and their work wisely as well, enable them to have a healthy balance between the two. And Lord, as they lead and make the decisions that are important to the city and for our future, would you enable them to leave a legacy for the people that come and for the people that are here. But we pray that you would enable them to serve and to serve wisely and guide them in every decision. May you bless the proceedings today, and may they honor you in all that they do. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
And please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to my right. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, please. Pastor, thank you for your time. Where'd you come from?
Kansas City.
Okay, you're welcome. Hopefully you get, I'm sure you use your wonderful airport here in the past, so thank you. Good morning, I'm Cecil Pendergrass, currently the Vice Chair of the Port Commission. Commissioner Wayne, unfortunately, could not be here today, so I'll be conducting the meeting, and our prayers are with him and his family this morning. We'll start off, we have a recap. We have two items Steve wanted to have deferred, 32 and 33.
Yes, please. I'd like to defer, Mr. Chair, items 32 and 33.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Any public comment on that action to defer number 32, 33? Back to work for a motion. Could be one motion, Richard, or Rob?
That would be fine, Mr. Chairman.
One motion is fine.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Any objection? No objections. Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to consent items. Items pulled by the discussion. Commissioner Hammond.
I have nothing for today, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Maluka.
Is 28 on consent or? Consent items.
25, 24.
28 would be under administrative.
I have nothing to pull for
Okay.
consent, thank you.
Commissioner Greenwell.
I have none.
Okay. We'll come back for the motion for the balance.
Move approval of the balance of the consent agenda. I'll second.
We have a second. Any public comment on the consent agenda at this time? Public comment? Back to the board. Any discussion? Any objections? No objection. Motion carries. Administrative agenda. Mr. Hennigan.
Mr. Chair, excuse me. I'd like to ask Mr. McGonigal to introduce item 25, which references some computer and hardware software with Omnia, if you could, Mr. McGonigal.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Good morning, everybody. Brian McGonigal. Good to see everybody. This is, as Steve said, approve the purchase of computer and hardware totaling $1.6 million. What we're doing here is up on the third floor of our in our offices, we have two data centers that house all of our servers. We're going to those servers are currently run on VMware. We're going to migrate off of VMware. We're going to buy some equipment, Nutanix equipment, and run it on Nutanix. So we're switching from VMware, which is becoming unreliable and end of life, and we're going to back it up with Nutanix. It requires some purchase of some hardware and some software. We will save, doing this migration, we'll be able to support many more servers than we do right now, and we'll save about $188,000 over 5 years after we buy this equipment. So it's critical. Our IT guys really want to get away from VMware and move over to Nutanix. A lot of counties are doing that. And procurement did a good job and got us some good prices on this equipment. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff on number 25? Okay, any public comment on item number 25? We'll come back to the board for a motion.
Move approval of the requested motion.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Number 26.
I'd like to ask Mr. Brigado to introduce 26 as well. It's reference some authority to the executive director under staff. Mr. McGonigal, if you will, please.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. What we're trying to do here, Commissioners, is streamline the process for our tenants. Revenue-generating contracts or leases that comply with published rates. We're going to have Steve sign those. Aeronautical and non-aeronautical agreements less than 12 months. Estoppel certificates, which is for leases, and advertising agreements. Let me just give you an example. We're trying to streamline the process for our tenants with small dollar amount leases. There's a couple today on consent that you just approved. American Airlines, 171 square feet. The rate is already, they're paying the published rate, our rate. We think we could have executive director sign those instead of bothering you with them. So these are small dollar amounts, agreements, just to streamline the process. We think we can take, just today there was 4 or 5 of them. So we're hoping it's make it much easier and streamline it.
Thank you. I'll move the item.
I'll second it,
We have a
Chairman.
motion second. Any public comment on number 26? Back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. 27.
Great, thank you.
And item 27, to ask Mr. Roque to come to the podium, it is in reference to our Avfield agreement at Pagefield.
Morning. For the record, Steve Roque. Avfield Corporation has been the aviation fuel supplier for base ops at Pagefield since 2021. Staff is requesting board approval to extend the contract through December 31st, 2030 under the same terms and conditions. This extension activates additional incentives proposed in Avfield's original RFP response, which includes a reduction in annual fuel truck lease payments from $29,000 to $4,000 per year, resulting in a total savings of approximately $123,000. In addition to fuel supply, the contract includes vital support services such as technical support, insurance, training, and marketing that contribute to the operational success of base ops in Lee County Port Authority.
Any questions? I move the item.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Motion second. Any public comment on this item? Back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Number 28. Now I know why the cops are here this morning. We've been talking about this for 10 years. So this is a good thing. We've been trying to get them out of the building. No pun intended there. Trying to help you guys out so you have your own locker rooms and your own jail cells and stuff. So thank you.
Yeah,
10
so,
years, seriously.
Yeah.
I know, Steve, you weren't here, but this is something that's been issued for years because it was really unsafe. We found, keeping prisoners inside the airport, and there's having them separate. There was a real lockdown, so they're locked in the building now. So, Emily?
Yes, good morning, everyone. For the record, Emily Underhill Development. A new public safety building facility has been designed and bid, as the Commissioner said, that will provide a secure location base for APD operations and responses, and will also house a new emergency operations center and satellite locations for airport communications and airport ID offices in the event of an emergency. The preferred site along Air Cargo Lane was approved by the board and the FAA as part of the most recent RSW Airport Master Plan update. On January 15th of 2025, 8 bids were received as a result of a competitive hard bid. An evaluation of the bids determined that all received bids were responsive when compared with the requirements of the request for bids, and that Manhattan Construction Company was the lowest responsive and qualified bidder. Staff requests award to Manhattan in the amount of $13,116,275.06, and seek approval of a total project budget in the amount of $18,053,436.
I move the item. Discussion? Second?
I'll second the item, Chairman.
Discussion?
Yeah, so if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I have some concerns with this particular project, not because of the police station itself, but because of the contractor that's the apparent low bidder right now. And that was some dramatic little pause.
Next.
Mike, turn your phone off, people.
Go in the dugout.
I'm on
Go
restriction.
back in the dugout.
The pros, timing's everything. Playing that one? No.
We didn't do that.
I got everyone's attention. Start paying attention. No.
I thought you had the play ball song.
I reached out to turn it off a while ago and I forgot.
Well, thank you for that.
Commissioner
You're right, I'm
Wilkins,
sure
thank
wake
you.
you up. Go ahead.
Please continue. Your concerns for the Manhattan because of being the low bidder.
All right, so we all want this project to move forward and succeed as predictably and seamlessly as possible, right? I think we can agree on that. My concern is that the track record that we have here with this particular contractor has proven to be challenging. In my opinion, when we just had a change order to double our price and double our timeline and more on the existing phase of work they have right now. They've just now began their reset process, and to award more work to them as a side job on top of what they're getting their legs underneath right now to get phase one done, I am concerned that if there's another hiccup or an issue and their eye's not on the ball for where they are on the current project, that the predictability of the finish line of this job could be in question. And if we run into a pinch between both jobs on critical path deadlines, then which of the two jobs are more important for which critical path are they going to be able to solve? So I would much rather see somebody else do this work. And I think there are other alternate paths to rebidding this project that are relatively short order, alternates that could be provided that we could redo this purchase agreement within a few months' time that would allow us to have to not be stuck with the same vendor contractor on phase one and the public safety building. So I'm all pro public safety building, but if we spend a few months on the front end on a reprocurement step process where they say they ran late on the actual build later and it's outside of our control, this is the only time we have a control mechanism left to do this. And I think somebody with a singular focus on this job, it's the only job they have, is going to be more predictable for us as a customer. So those are my concerns.
Emily or Director Hennigan would like to address the questions, the concerns?
So specific question would be from their capabilities, or just seeking clarity on what specifically you'd like to add?
I'm concerned that if we add more to their plate right now, while they're in the middle of the reset that we have, this could be a less predictable outcome with them having to wrap their arms around another side job. I mean, for example, our windows that we put outside for 2 hurricanes last year, they're still there because they haven't finished the execution of the paperwork to have the trade move our $5 million windows indoors. They just haven't gotten to that yet. So I'm concerned that their capacity or resources may not be enough to deliver a predictable outcome that's desired for this critical path.
So I'll start, and if need be, Emily. With any project, across the airport, both airports, much like in the county, a company is doing more than one thing at once. The expectation of anybody who bids on any of our projects is the capability to finish it. On time, on budget, hopefully under budget, where applicable or able. With something like this, I believe we had 8 different companies that bid on this project. It was awarded low bid to Manhattan. I know that they are doing other work out in the community, be it private or on behalf of the county. They are doing the project that you referenced here as well. My expectation if somebody is bidding, and I'm sure it's the same of the board, is you would provide us with an end project on time, or at the date that it's due, or you wouldn't have bid. That doesn't necessarily negate your comments or your concerns, but that is the expectation that we take as a Port Authority when we do this, knowing the comments that you've just made.
I'll have a question behind that then. When you say they were the low bid and qualified bid, were there other parameters besides the fact that they were actually the low bid, or were they the low bid that met all the qualifications that someone decided they were the right one?
They were the lowest, what's the correct terminology, please, Emily?
The lowest responsible bid.
Yes.
Okay.
In English, lowest qualified.
Yes, yeah, I know, yes.
Were there people that had a lower bid with that weren't qualified? That's the question.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Were there people that had a lower bid that weren't qualified, that didn't qualify?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I was presented with eight contractors.
I have a question. If I could. Sure. So Commissioner Wilkie, thanks for bringing this. I had some of the same concerns in the past too for this, before this item came before today. And obviously when I saw the agenda item, I was concerned about where we are now compared over the last 3 years. I had to remind myself that we're here today because of what Atkins did as far as the engineering, and Manhattan's the one that caught that. So I had some of the same concerns. I want to see the project be built sooner than later. We've been waiting many, many years for this, and I want to make sure we're not sitting here 2 years from now wondering what happened. So I had those questions to staff before, and I feel comfortable because to redo the process, and I don't know who would be Emily or Steve or Richard would be if this debt was denied today, what the process would be to go back to rebid, since all the current bidders already know what the project is and the cost. What happens with that? And we were trying to move forward when we were like 2 years ago and fix those mistakes and understand the concerns of the increased cost. But the increased cost is because we're having to re-engineer because of what Atkins and add this material to this. So believe me, I had the same concerns Commissioner Mullica you had as far as that when I saw this, because we want to get this built. We want to be sitting here a year from now wondering why nothing's happened. But my question, two-part question, is what would happen if nothing happened today? And do you feel confident that this will be built on schedule, on time, within budget?
So
Based on the way it's presented us today.
So, and I will answer the second part first. The next agenda item is for Half Acre as construction manager. So Half Acre is in charge of managing, running, overseeing that project, making sure the deliverables are done. The company doing the work for item 28 is Manhattan. So they're the one constructing it. Half Acre is the one overseeing, your kind of hired gun, if you will, to manage that project in conjunction with Emily's staff. So the expectation is always on time, on budget. To the second, or I guess your first question from a rebid process, we're in May, we would have to revisit scope of work with Half Acre. They would then have to go out and rebid. Part of that rebidding is we would have to have added costs to that scope to pay them to go out and rebid what's in front of you today. Then that would have to come back either through normal board and ASMC schedule, or if there was something downtown, but we're looking best case 3 months to 5-6 months, depending on the duration to get everything back. So that would be the potential delay, at least 3 months to potentially double that.
Okay. Which, where we're sitting now compared to the terminal, that 2 years, 3 months, 5 months is not that much time. I just want to make sure, are you confident that they will stay on budget and on schedule based upon the way the item is today, based upon their bid?
Yes, based on what's presented in front of us, I am. And the other added, part to it too is when you look at the total package, you look at item 30 with Schenkel Schultz, they've been integral to this, this whole process. So the team that's involved outside of Manhattan with the construction aspect, just building from the ground up, has been intimately involved. Well, I've been here, almost 4 years, and probably longer than that, with the process, with the planning. I see, Chief up there, he was integral when he was deputy chief there's a lot of work and effort to get to this point, to get a refined, defined, final scope of work with the team that you have laid out. So I have confidence, yes.
Yeah, I just want to be sitting here a year now, 6 months, we're going to be the ones asked, why are we here today? Why'd you do this again after what happened again? Obviously, I'm remembering Atkins that got us there for that. So
Yes.
that's why I was asking for that, so.
Follow up. Respectfully, during the first 3 years of phase one, the front end, the first half of the construction timeline delays were attributed to Manhattan's performance on the contract. They had their own accountability and issues for delivery of schedule and manpower and other issues on that job that were compounded by the engineer, certainly no question, but they weren't on time up until the minute that they discovered those design deficiencies. So I just want to be clear that there was two people on that journey that both of them had impacts on us. And just to clarify, if I understand it correctly, on the outline you mentioned for the 3-month process, Half Acre is the construction manager?
Yes.
Am I saying the right term for that?
Sure.
And Manhattan would be working underneath them.
Correct,
Right.
sir.
So Half Acre is also a general contractor, right?
No, not under this contract. They are the
No,
construction.
but I'm saying, but they do that work. I mean, they are licensed to do.
They are.
Yes, Emily's nodding yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so they would be qualified. If we said yes to their contract, we wouldn't be saying no to the deal. We would just be restructuring. They could, underneath their contract that we approved as CM
Correct.
today,
Correct,
they could actually bid it to the trades
correct.
and put it underneath this existing contract umbrella. So it's not like kick the can, rebid it cold to the whole world. It would be recalibrating their existing agreement to allow them to bid the sub-trades.
They would have to
directly.
go through that bidding exercise, 30-day bid period.
And it may cost them some money, to put the bid together.
Correct.
But it'd be relatively nominal on an $18 million project. And if they had full control over their subs and not somebody in the middle, maybe that does give us some more control over the process. So I'm willing to look at that because we're not really deferring it. We're just recalibrating, and I think it's insurance policy to make sure that 3 months rebid is not 3 months of crisis a year from now that we go, well, we tried, and then we end up being a year late in the way of some other baggage claim and other issues that we have here.
I would like to add something. I mean, I think when we sit down with Manhattan, once this is executed, we're going to work with them to figure out who's assigned to this project as far as project management and superintendency. And we're going to make sure that it's different folks. We're not going to have the same folks managing this project as the phase one. So we're going to bring these concerns to them, make sure that people aren't loaded up.
So if they have extra resources and manpower, why don't we ask them to accelerate the job they have already with those?
It's different project teams.
All right, so we have more questions on the board, then I was asked the special management.
I was gonna say, I even had some questions,
Yes.
Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you
Commissioner
so
Hunt,
much.
go
So, help me out with a couple questions. Why did we switch to the current method? What is the name of this method? We're using CMGC, or were we using CMGC and now we've turned to a different method?
Yeah, so originally this was a construction manager general contractor model. And then it was, hey, the county is doing things a little bit differently. Let's look at that model. So that is what's presented to you today, is the construction manager. And then as the Port Authority, we went out and bid the work, which is how you got item 28 with the low bid. So this process mirrored what the county was doing. Previously, we were doing the construction manager general contractor, where they would go out, much like phase one, and do all of the bidding on our behalf. So that was the kind of the talk of, hey, let's see how this works going that route. So Port staff, through our procurement office, went out on the street for item number 28. Our staff, through Emily and other team members, did the review, and that's how we got to the item we're at today.
So what problem were we trying to solve when we changed that delivery method? What were we trying to get for ourselves?
What were we trying to get for ourselves?
Yeah, what problem were we trying to solve?
I think,
Yeah, another oversight. In other words, you have someone also, when you have a construction manager and then a GC that's doing the job, your construction manager is overseeing them, making sure it's another set of eyes following them, making sure that they're getting it done on time or they're showing up on the jobs. And it kind of takes the burden off of this group. Trying to manage the job completely, it gives them another avenue. And that was one of the reasons we suggested that, because in the past, sometimes the CM and the GC on the job were the same folks. So it's sort of like the who's watching the hen house.
Exactly.
So that's why the CM is separate. I just feel like that was a simpler
Yes,
explanation.
yeah, thank you,
So
sir.
that was exactly what I was
Yeah.
looking for. Thank you
Yes.
so much,
Yeah.
Commissioner, for that explanation. So on this project, in light of things that we had encountered in the past, we decided to try a new delivery method, a new building method, where we would now have a construction manager who was going to be our agent, watching the hen house, if you will, watching the project, watching the general contractor to make sure that they do it. So the onus wasn't just on Port Authority staff, but it was on a real expert, somebody who is licensed to do the work, watching the person who's doing the work to make sure that it's getting done on time and on budget and correctly. And I assume they'll be reviewing any change orders that get sent our way. and
Yes, sir.
They're good. Okay, so
Yes.
we have that, I guess, risk mitigation there. We've built in a new layer to manage and mitigate risk by having this construction manager. So explain to me real quickly, how does this public safety building, maybe Emily, you're the best one to answer this. How does this public safety building fit into the greater Phase 1 terminal expansion project?
Okay. Well, there's work areas within Phase 1 that Manhattan has to do work in. And so it's important that these areas get vacated and the APD is allowed to move to the new facility to meet a certain timeline where Manhattan comes in. And then ultimately Suffolk has work under the Phase 2 project that ties into the building, BHS systems and chiller lines and that kind of stuff.
So in an effort to stay on time on the Phase 1 project that they're working on, Manhattan is now incentivized to move the crew
You could
who's
say
gonna be
that.
building the safety building, right?
Yeah.
To move them along and
Yeah,
keep them
you could say
going
that.
on that, right?
Mhm.
That's an incentive
Right.
to keep it going. Okay, so, basically, what we have to do here is we have to look for ways to mitigate risk. I like this idea that we're gonna have a construction manager watching this project for us. We now have even more expertise to watch what's going on. I like that there's an incentive to get this project finished so that you can get the greater project finished in a much quicker way. Look, I think it is completely and perfectly valid to ask the question, what? Why are we going to award this to Manhattan? Because I'll be completely transparent. As soon as I saw this item, I placed a phone call and I said, are we really going to give more work to Manhattan knowing everything that's on their plate? That is the most valid and reasonable reaction to seeing the item. But then you have to take the explanation along with that then and look at what have you done. And the truth is, look, they are able to give us the best price for this building because they're already mobilized and on site and because they need this to get done so that they can get the other greater project done. So I'm okay, especially in light of the fact that we've got half acre there as our risk mitigation factor. And that's what swung me to being okay with this today.
I have one more, Vice Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead. Commissioner Greenwell?
Is there, in the contract, do we have a timeline? Is there a timeline? Do they have a deadline? In other words, do we have
Yeah,
that
there's
in
a
the- okay.
duration and there's LDs, $1,000 a day.
Okay, and there's penalties. That was my next question. Okay, so that is in place.
Yes, sir.
May I say something?
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Gall, Cal, Special Manager, go ahead.
We changed how we award these. We did just get the people to bid, and then they worked out the price after we selected the quality. And then we, as a group, could say, they've got too much work. We put that in our rules a long time ago. So we could have said, no, Manhattan's doing too much work here. But when you go to lowest bidder, that takes that off the table. And then I worry if we say no today, just my thoughts sitting here, then they sue us. They were lowest bidder. We get all kind of stuff going on. I mean, I don't think they would with what they got going on, but it always complicates it.
Well, we always reserve the right to reject any and all bids.
Sir?
We always reserve the right to reject any and all bids. So we are allowed to change our mind as the customer.
Right.
Did anybody else, the management team, since you're involved in this process? Go ahead. No?
I don't know if this helps or not, but
the ASMC committee was also very concerned, had the same concerns that Commissioner Malika had. And we had the opportunity to address them directly, Manhattan Construction.
Okay.
And we told them to their face that we were very concerned about what's going on with the terminal. And we're very concerned about the amount of work that they have out here and in the county, other places. And we wanted their absolute assurance that they could do this project if they were to receive the contract. And they said absolutely that they could do it and they would be on time with the project. So based on that, we supported this motion.
Okay, well, I wasn't privileged to those
Well-
conversations, but I'm glad you had those. Any other feedback on that?
I thought the type of bid it was, because there's two separate types of biddings, right? The type of bid it was, that it has to go to the lowest and most qualified and blah, 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 blah. So we really didn't have a choice. We were concerned about it, but because of how it came down and how it was bid, I don't know why it was bid that way. I don't know what causes the board to make that decision to bid this one way and other projects other ways. But because it came to us bid this way, it's my understanding we really didn't have a choice other than to express our concerns about what was going on and the volume that they had on their plate. I still have the same concern. And, I think, I don't know why it was deferred from last meeting. Was that some of y'all's concern as to why it came out of March's agenda and now came onto this agenda? Why did that happen if we don't have concerns?
Well, no, it was just to separate because the other one was heavy on the phase one and that one, and just to make sure that the two items were separate, figuring there would be conversation like there is today, not to tie up. So it was deferred the one cycle just so we could have this conversation.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. We have wrestled with a lot of issues over the last 4 years or so, stuff like this. And it involved time, it involves money. And I think if there's a pressure or a concern is to get these projects moving. And what format did we do that? And I think the biggest concern was, as you said, is that we have additional oversight. And the oversight with Half Acre is that they're also a general contractor. So I like the fact that they're the oversight. I like the fact that they can do the same thing. So we're not just having two bifunctional situations there. And so I look at it in a little bit different vein, and that's that it's important that we get these things moving. We've rectified the bigger situation. This is a smaller situation. I have no firm is perfect in any way, but Manhattan is about as good as you get from my perspective, and so I have confidence in them, even though there's been some missteps. And the missteps, as you alluded before, kind of went back to Atkins. And so I don't want to throw all of that weight, on Manhattan.
We'll come back to the board now. We have a motion, a second, for any other discussions, questions, Commissioner Malika?
Yes, so you mentioned there's a certain point where the facility where the police are stationed right now is going to be in the way of the next phase of work. What is that date?
Let's see. I believe it's in August.
August the 26th.
Yeah, August 26th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 15 months from now. So hypothetically, if we let Half Acre manage it on the alternate path that we laid out for a 3-month sub-bid process, still had them as our oversight person, still had them in control of the trades, and we didn't have any issues with someone having 2 different projects for us at the same time, we could still deliver that in August of next year on either path.
Well, it would be close to the time frame, yes.
Within weeks, I mean, it would be,
Yeah.
yes.
Subject to,
Barring no hurricanes or
yeah,
anything
subject
else.
to life
Well,
happening.
if there's a hurricane, none of these dates are gonna be
Yeah.
the same. That wouldn't matter which contract
Yeah.
we're under.
And that's what causes some issues before.
But that wouldn't be the procurement method. That wouldn't be this challenge of resources or capacity issues. We could still have the same finish line with the same oversight Half Acre company we already have with good trades and still not have the distraction of another project, because if there is a critical path to phase one and they get distracted with this police station deadline, that's gonna be a conflict. I mean, we're potentially letting them get in the way of phase one again. And they're gonna say, well, you told me the police station deadline was the most important one this month. You know, I mean, I think.
Under your
I'm just worried about
scenario,
that.
are you saying under your scenario, though, we wouldn't have anyone watching Half Acre? We'd be back to the old way of doing business. We'd basically just let Half Acre be the guy out there, and it'd be up to our staff to manage Half Acre and hopefully catch everything.
Well, they're already our direct person under this, but yes, they would be the GC hiring the subs.
Yeah.
Correct.
But I mean, I thought that was the whole point of why we chose to have a construction manager on this project, was so that we'd have expertise and experts watching the project.
Well, I'm saying we
That's
have
kind
the
of
same
that
expert watching the project for us.
Yeah, but they'd be performing the work then, right?
Which we were trying to avoid.
Okay,
yeah.
Unfortunately, gentlemen, I was not part of that
Yeah.
meeting or decision last year, so I don't know, I wasn't part of the discussion, so I can't speak to that. I think a hard bid may have made somebody feel better that we know what it costs ahead of time. You know, that's why RFPs are more predictable, like you want the low bid and you want to save money and you don't want to make a deal after you find out what it costs later after you award a contract is kind of the risk of the qualifications package, right? Because you don't know what it costs until after you hire them, right? So people don't always like that.
I just have a problem changing the rules after somebody's already bid it, you know? I mean, we intentionally set up to do it this way.
All right.
To have a construction manager and then a general contractor, because we wanted to try a different method for once, and
I want it to work
Yeah.
as bad as anybody here, I promise you.
Yeah.
Okay, I want it to succeed. I want to point out the risks, the concerns, and then the team can make the decision from there. I respect it totally.
Can I make one
Mr. Brill?
final comment? I think this was kind of a test for the airport here, the way we're doing it, making sure we're having oversight by having a CM and that in place. I think that is a much better operation, a much better function. But I just want to at least say this on the record. I think Manhattan is a very capable company, obviously. So I'll just say it. This is their opportunity to show us that they are the company that they have built. Be on time. Show us that you're the low bid for a reason, and you do a great job here. And we won't have to have this discussion in the future, hopefully. I know they're a good company, and this is a great opportunity for them to show us that. Little pressure on you, by the way, but that's, you know.
We deserve to be treated as.
That's right. So I
very
want to
best
say,
top
this
shelf
is,
customer, too.
if we're going to make this vote today to award this contract, then show us you deserve it as you build this. I think there's no, we deserve that as a county after the last deal. So I just want that on the record.
And Commissioner, look, you mentioned earlier, you saying we as a customer, we can reject a contract anytime we can. But now we as a legislative body here, setting policy, and we have the contract, and that's why I asked questions of staff about the process, the timing, accountability.
Yeah.
We're the ones be holding them accountable now in the future if this doesn't work. And that's our process we go through here, is if we're told one thing and then a year later, 2 years later, something doesn't happen, then we obviously can take steps to protect the Port Authority in that way and to react to that. So
Fair enough. We all want to win the same game, I promise. There's no question. I just had risk management concerns, and we're going to hold people accountable. We have checks and balances in place that are improving.
I think you heard from everybody today, we all had the same concerns, months ago. And then I think based upon everything that airport management team goes through with this, staff goes through with this, it's just not a rubber stamp thing. I think based upon the process, now we put the other protection in place with Half Acre, and it gives us more confidence that this project will be built in time. So these men and women can go out there and still make this airport the best airport in the world. So have them have the proper facilities that 10 years ago, no one wanted to hear about.
We all want that.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion, a second on the floor. Any objections to the item?
I'm going to object only to the style, but not to the substance. So I'm going to be a no on this side.
Okay. Any other objections? Motion carries 3-1. Number 29.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like Emily to introduce the contract amendment for construction management services for Half Acre. Ms.
All
Underhill.
right, thank you. Yeah, I think we just spoke a lot about this. This item is requesting approval of a contract for Half Acre to provide construction management agent services to provide general oversight of all aspects of the construction of the public safety building project. As a result of negotiations, a contract amendment is requested in the amount of $1,196,384.
Great. Any questions for staff on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve the item.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Any public comment on item 29? Come back to the board for any other discussion, questions?
I'm good with this one.
Okay. Just checking. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you. Number 30.
Okay, this is also a related item, and this is requesting approval of a contract with Schenkel Schultz to perform construction administration services for the RSW Public Safety Building. They are the engineer of record, and as a result of negotiations, a contract amendment is requested in the amount of $282,898.
Any questions for staff? Any public comment on item 30? Come back forward, any motion?
Move approval.
A motion, we have a second. Any objections? Objection, motion carries. 31.
All right, this item is also related to the public safety building. It's the last one. And this is for Michael Baker. It's to allow them to perform construction engineering inspection services for the project. The CEI consultant will monitor and inspect the construction contract work such that the project is constructed in conformity with the plans, specifications, procurement, and contracting requirements, and all other requirements set forth in the construction contract documents. So as a result of negotiations, a contract amendment is requested in the amount of $564,560.
I do have a question on this.
Yes.
Chair. Was this bid out when you say negotiated? Was this?
This was
bid
a competitive solicitation through a RFQ, a request for qualifications, yes, and they
Okay.
were awarded that.
Okay. Any public comment on item 31? Any other questions, discussion of the board?
Move approval.
We have a motion?
Second.
Second. Any objection? No objection. Number 32 and number 33 has been deferred. 34.
Item number 34 is an amendment that adds $2,627,879 in state funds in fiscal year 24-25 to be used towards eligible costs for the tower project. Port Authority staff continues to work with FDOT staff to program additional funds to reduce the Port Authority's costs associated with this project. And this brings FDOT's participation to date to $31,395,527.
Any questions? Any public comment on this item, number 34? Come back to the board.
That's an easy one.
I'll move the item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any objections? No objection, motion carried. Number 35.
Commissioners, Rob Holborn with the County Attorney's Office. Number 35 is a tolling agreement with Atkins Realis related to design services for the RSW terminal expansion. This will allow us time to work with Atkins Realis to review and resolve the claims related to the design issues related to the terminal expansion.
Okay. Questions?
I move approval, Mr.
We
Chairman.
have a motion. Any
I'll
public motion?
Second.
We have a second. Any public comment? Back to the board. Any objections? No objection. Motion carries. Commissioner items. Any commissioners have any items?
Chairman, if I may, so not to belabor a discussion, but I think we had a wonderful discussion here about this today. And one thing I wanted to ask, this just came to mind, otherwise I would have given everybody a heads up about it, but so can we, I know that the CMGC method, the low bid method, all of that this is something different for us that we haven't traditionally done. Maybe this is a question for our attorney's office, but could we put something in our future bid packages so that people know as they're bidding on these jobs that we don't want to award too much work to one single vendor on the airport property? So what safeguards could we build into future bid packages so that we could use that as like a qualification or some reason to reject, hey, great, your lowest you're qualified, you're responsive, you're all that. But however, we do have some restriction on, if you have this much work going on at the airport, we're gonna go to the next bidder.
Mr. Chairman?
Richard?
Thank you, sir. As we've discovered here today, there are different rules that apply based on the procurement process you're going through. With regard to the low bid process, keep in mind that the statutes require an award to the lowest qualified bidder. So the determination of qualification by committee makes a recommendation to the board as a legislative body. When it awards, implicitly determines that they are a qualified bidder. If there is a concern of too much work, while it would be difficult to come up with an absolute standard by contract price or job size or anything along those lines, it would be difficult to come up with a objective standard in that respect. The determination of too much work could go into the determination of qualified bidder.
That's kind of what I'm asking for, right? Is there some way to write those qualifications in the future bid packages so that people know, even as they're bidding, like, hey, I've already got 15 projects at the airport, and one of the qualifications is, well, you shouldn't have this amount of work at the airport or whatever, you know? They wouldn't even waste their time, but they would also understand then why we would have chosen somebody who maybe had less work at the airport or something.
Mr. Chairman, I believe if we take a look at the bid specs as they're being drafted, and we include a statement in there, and don't quote me on this, too much work, something along those lines, you could then rely on that even in the low bid process in the determination of lowest qualified. So if it's the board's desire, we can certainly work on that and come up with proposed language to include in future bid specs for even low bid projects. Now, we do have some language to that effect as a evaluative criteria, but if the board directs, we can certainly bump that up. Sitting here today, like I say, I'm not sure how we would quantify that, and that's why I would reserve, because I don't know if you quantify it based on dollar value of the project, size of the project. I just don't know what the industry standard is, but we could certainly take a look at it.
You know, I would like to make a motion to give you all the direction to at least research that for future bid packages so that we have that available to us. Could you suggest a motion that I could make that would give you the direction to do that?
Mr. Chairman?
Richard?
Perhaps something along the lines of direct port staff, including the port attorney's office, to review our bid specifications to create a standard which takes into account existing work of the proposed bidder.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Can I ask a question, please? Would that also include a review of, if it's a procurement ordinance, something to write rather than just a contract? Are you including the ordinance itself, review of the procurement ordinance itself?
Yes, actually, that's
Is that
a very valid suggestion to put that criteria in both the procurement ordinance and also in the individual bid spec package. Very valid suggestion.
We were just going through a procurement review on the county side recently, so if it's one and the same in the review process to tie it out, would you consider that?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Do we have a motion? Was there a second?
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have a second?
May I just
Robbie?
ask a
Yes.
question
Yes.
of council or whoever? When does it call for you bidding it out as a low bid contract versus the typical contract? Because we have that factor built in to when it's not the low bid, right? I forget what each one of them are called. But what concerns me about putting something in there that might, we've had a lot of bids come out and very few contractors come forward for some projects.
Yeah.
I would hate to discourage qualified contractors when we didn't have enough qualifieds. And that's where you rely on us, I think, to look at those and work with staff as to who's qualified, who's not. It's just, I don't understand why you have the low bid process to begin with. Why do we have that?
Mr. Chairman,
Good. Richard, yes.
simple answer, the board told us to.
You know, I just,
And I don't mean to be
I mean,
flippant
seriously,
in
I
that.
don't know when it
That's
comes
the
into
board's
play.
prerogative, and as a result of the Phase 1 terminal expansion project, which followed a different process,
Okay,
we had an extensive discussion, and the board directed us to utilize this procedure for this building. Now, it could change in the future based on an upcoming project, don't know, but for this one, the board directed that we follow.
okay. I just didn't know what was the determining factor as to what projects you bid under low qualified bidder versus the typical.
5 commissioners told us to.
But
And they get to
there are
make that
different
rule.
tools in the toolbox, right? There are projects that are better suited to hard bids, and there's other ones that are more design or more nebulous on the front end of a job and harder to get a hard number up front, you know, that require more massaging, so to speak. And so why there's different options.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a quick follow-up. By engaging in this endeavor and looking at language for inclusion, possible inclusion in the ordinance as well as future bid specs, I think it opens the door wider for the committee as well as the board to have that type of discussion as to the amount of work a successful bidder might be undertaking at the time. I think it gives you wider latitude to engage in those type discussions during the bidding process in order to determine lowest qualified bid. A lot of people outside of government think we have to take the lowest bid. It's the lowest qualified.
Mr. Chairman?
We have, hang on a second, Committee Man Sandelli, you wanted to say something before?
If I was a contractor and somebody was gonna determine whether I had too much work, I'm a little concerned about that, you know, and is that going to stymie me even going forward? I do think what's valid is that as we try to develop some language, is that we very clear that we want to see your scope of work currently to make sure that we're comfortable that you can assume this responsibility going forward.
And I'm only talking about, do you have too much work at the airport? Really, I don't need to get into the rest of your business, but you shouldn't.
That gets to interpretation and stuff and how broad do you get, so.
Okay, if I could, the chair.
Well, a number of years ago, there was a perception that came to the ASMC committee that the same people were getting all the bids.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't opened up to the whole community. This was years ago. So we did put a process in place where we were notified before we voted on an item how much work that particular vendor had at the airport. And we used that information in making our final vote as who to select for that work. So that process was put into place by Ben a couple of years ago. And I'm not sure what the status is of that right now because we're not getting that report anymore about how much work they have already when they come before us.
Each time they bring the package, it says it in there.
Okay.
It's a per package deal.
So I think this process is already in place.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask Emily to come up, but while she's doing that, I also want to point out, as we're different from the county, we have our friends at the FAA. And the FAA, depending on the grants and the reimbursements that we're doing, there are several stipulations depending on type of project that we're doing that says we have to deliver it in certain fashion. Might be low bid, it might be Buy America, it might be various things that in some instances, for lack of better words, we're stuck. We have an option and this is what it has to be. It's obviously not in totality. This is a landside project, but holistically, that's one of the items that we'll have to take into account when we partner with the county attorney's office to also look at.
Richard?
Mr. Chairman, again, just a follow-up to the discussion. The reason I'm hard-pressed to come up with objective criteria now is I think it has to be part of that larger discussion. And by way of example, hypothetically, you have a 10-person firm that has $10 million worth of business. Well, a $2 million contract might be material under those circumstances. But if you've got a 1,000-person firm with $10 million worth of work, a $2 million contract may not be material. But I think if we create that framework for discussion and exploration, then it's ripe for such discussion as part of the process.
So, Mr. Chair, we have in our strategic planning for the board, county commissioners, we had scheduled a procurement workshop on our agenda. Is there a way to marry the two and maybe have a combination procurement workshop meeting? Or that doesn't really.
They're different procurements, yeah.
Is there a way to tie that or have an option for a second one? I guess whatever way you want to discuss it.
We understand the concept. You could have them chronologically, so to speak. It's a real nightmare.
I know they can't be the same exact meeting.
Right.
I just mean the same date or the same people at the same place.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, Emily.
No, that's
Just
okay.
real quick, we've presented the options before. It's probably some time ago. We can revisit that, as I think Attorney Wesh was alluding to, what we can do and in what situations we have a deck prepared already, be it CMGC, CMAR, CM, low bid. We have that all set up that we can definitely revisit and work with the county attorney's office.
Chair, if I may,
Scott?
can't we just simply say that part of the qualification is workload? Or perceived workload? Why can't we just add that to the definition of qualified bidder?
Mr. Chairman,
Richard?
what you just expressed is probably the 40,000-foot philosophy. How we actually put that into practice to withstand potential challenges to that by disappointed bidders is the massage work that we will undertake. We understand your comment, we understand the committee's concerns and the board's concerns. So within those concerns, let us try and work up some language to address those concerns.
Anybody you wanted to add?
I think I'm up here to address Noel and Robbie's comments, which were the workload summary.
Better leave you up there.
That's okay. So we ask for a current workload summary from firms when they are putting in a solicitate or responding to a solicitation for construction manager / general contractor services. So that is a selection process based on qualifications. So that is one of the evaluation criteria. You don't see that current workload summary under a hard bid, so that's why you're not seeing it under this situation.
Thanks for that clarification.
Are you saying workload here?
It's only workload for the Port Authority, so it doesn't address the 100 other projects they might be working on for another client.
Right, but because everybody, I think, knows I look at every page that you give.
Yes,
me
you
to
do.
look at.
Thank you.
And I do see it every time when your committee comes together to evaluate. You do give a listing within the submission.
Correct.
Of if they have other contracts in progress here with.
Correct.
So we do know it when we make a
Correct.
decision.
Just for selections based on qualifications, not hard bid.
Not hard bid.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we have a motion, a second. I think staff has direction. Richard, do you have direction for that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any public comment on this action? Come back to the board. Any other discussion?
I think we had great discussion today. Everybody's had great feedback, so thank you.
Okay.
Great teamwork.
Any objection to the motion? No objection, motion carries. Thank you. Commissioner,
It's my commissioner item.
do you have anything else? Anybody else have a commissioner item?
I'm tapped out.
Committee appointments, we're all still here, so that's good. And comments from the chair? No.
Any comments?
No, sir.
Comments? No, we're all set,
Great.
thanks.
Thank you all for everything you do. Executive Director.
I have one comment that's hot off the presses from our TSA Federal Security Director. I'm sure you've seen in the news, Real ID has been implemented effective yesterday. He just advised that there's been no issues. The implementation is going good. There have been no passengers denied screening. And again, if you don't have Real ID and you're not from here, but you're listening from afar, bring your passport and you'll speed right through. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's actually good news. I think a lot of us have
That's
concerns
really
about
good
that
news.
happening across the country, especially for those coming from Chicago and different places, so, okay. Port Attorney, any comments?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Other than perhaps the observation that with regard to Real ID, it was a 20-year implementation period, but no further comments, Mr. Chairman.
It's kind of like the daylight savings, right? We're still waiting for that. Thank you, DC. Hey. Public comment on any other items? Any public comment tape from anybody? Marcia's got the day off again.
Can I talk to the public person? I've gotten
Talk
so
as
many
you.
comments, but Vicki is doing a wonderful job putting out the press releases, because Pageville is just knocking it out of the park. I mean, they're just, all the, I've had people come up to me and say, the airport is just doing great with all the awards that they're getting. So I think that means a lot.
Thank you, Vicki, and all your staff.
Good
Thank
job,
you.
Vicki.
Thank you.
I mean, and just to tag on to that, it's really important that we continue to tell the good story, because if we don't tell our own good story, nobody else is going to tell it for us, right? I mean, the media is as wonderful as they are and friendly as they are to us. I mean, they're not going to say, hey, I'm going to put out good news about the airport today. They'll be looking for the other stuff.
That's why we're glad you came out.
We could use a little of that down in Naples now, too.
Absolutely.
Okay, and if not, we'll be adjourned. We'll have a workshop following this. So we may like a break before the workshop. Can we go directly to the
Take a
workshop?
minute.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
we'll take 10 minutes and we'll come back in 10 minutes and come back at 10:40 for the workshop.
I gotta leave.
We'll go ahead and reconvene now. It's 10:43, I believe, so reconvene now for the Port Authority, and we'll. Director Hannigan,
Oh, thank you. I'd like to introduce,
2026 budget workshop.
yeah, Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Dave Amdor, is going to walk us through the first look at our budget. Mr. Amdor, if you'd like to proceed.
Good morning, Commissioners and members of ASMC. For the record, Dave Amdor, Deputy Executive Director and CFO. I'll be presenting the Port Authority's proposed initial 2026 budgets and get feedback from you all on some of the key inputs and assumptions used to develop the budget. Up on the screen is a calendar of key dates for the Port Authority's budget. Today is the budget workshop to present the initial draft budget. On May 22nd, in accordance with our airline use and lease agreement, we'll present the proposed budget to our 8 signatory carriers and listen to any feedback that they may have. We'll make any adjustments to the budget after our meeting today, as well as after our meeting with the airlines. And then on June 10th, we'll present the budget to ASMC. And then on June 19th, we'll come back to the board for budget approval. And in September, we'll have our required budget hearings on September 2nd and September 16th, allowing for public comment. So I'll start off by presenting our operating budget, and then the last couple of slides will discuss our 2026 capital budget. So we'll start off with our key budget inputs. Total passengers. Total passengers for 2026 budget is conservatively set at 11.4 million passengers. So if you look at the middle of the screen, we had a record fiscal year for total passengers in fiscal year 2024 with 11.1 million passengers. And then on the next line up for the 2025 budget, we budgeted for a 3% increase to 11.4 million passengers. However, thus far in the year, we haven't quite had the activity that we projected for a few reasons. First, we were down in October by almost 11% due to Hurricane Helena and Hurricane Milton impacting travel to the area. And then second, some of our ultra low-cost carriers are having a challenging year. Spirit Airlines filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in November and emerged from bankruptcy in March 2025. So during this time, they've been trying to right-size their operations, and they've scaled back service to a number of their markets, including ours. So through March, they're down 40% in our market. Some of our other carriers have absorbed some of that service, but not enough to make up for some of those substantial reductions. So a third reason, which is a more recent development, is travel nationwide is starting to dip a bit due to economic uncertainty. So thus far, we're down 3.3% through March compared to the prior year actual. But our summer schedule looks great. We're showing an increase in seats of 8% in May, 12% in June, 17% in July, and 11% in August. We'll see how things go, but we're hopeful to have a positive year-over-year increase in those summer months. So when you factor in the impacts at the beginning of the year and then what we're looking at for the summer, we're forecasting a little over 11.2 million passengers for fiscal year 25, which is that second line down, which is a decrease of 1.8 from the budget, but it'd still be a fiscal year record for us. So for the 2026 budget, at the top of the slide, as I mentioned earlier, we're estimating 11.4 million passengers, which is nearly flat to our 2025 budget and 1.5% over our 2025 forecasts. Any questions on passengers before I move to the next slide? Okay. So on slide 5 here, we're just showing our landed weight, which is another important input as it determines the landing fee that we charge the airlines. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail onto this because it pretty much follows the same trend that we just discussed on the passengers. So on slide 6, we're moving on from some of our assumptions, and we'll first go over our operating expense for fiscal year 2026. So we recognized some opportunities to make some reductions in some of our budget line items based on historical spend of actual versus budget. And we felt now is a good time to make those adjustments as we're taking on some more debt this fiscal year. And our revenues in fiscal year 26 won't be quite as strong as some of the concessions in the main terminal are going to be closed due to the construction that we have in Terminal Expansion Phase 1. So we asked the departments to target 94% of the prior year budget, or a 6% reduction, and they did a great job of finding some areas that could be reduced. So however, there are areas like insurance that are just out of our control, and there's some areas that we need to invest in for the future, like new software. But overall, we're pretty pleased with where we've landed. So in total, we've budgeted $57.6 million in operating expenses. And as you can see on the far right of the screen, that's right in line with what we budgeted in the prior year. It's actually a 0.23% reduction. So on the left side of the screen, you can see some of the decreases as well as some of the increases that mostly offset each other for the upcoming year. Some of the notable variances in the 26 budget include an additional $1 million in spending in IT as we continue to invest in upgraded technology and replace and refresh equipment each year. And then as I mentioned, our insurance line item is up over $500,000 as our property insurance appraisals were up, increasing our premiums. Our most notable decreases in budgeted operating expenses were $300,000 in utilities, as the budgeted rates in the prior year, which was quoted to us by FPL, ended up being quite a bit less than what was approved or published at the published rate. And then we've budgeted a lower dollar amount for the upcoming year to reflect that. So we have a $700,000 decrease in maintenance over a variety of line items, but ultimately less maintenance and repairs are budgeted as we have billions of dollars of construction going on. And then finally, we have $1 million less in operating capital compared to the prior year budget, as the prior year had some large IT equipment purchases. And just to clarify, when we say operating capital, that means smaller dollar purchases under $300,000, like vehicles and equipment. So I don't want to confuse that with the capital budget that I'm going to talk about in the last couple slides. So any questions on operating expense before I go to personnel?
Questions?
Great. So moving on, we'll go over personnel expenses now. We've got the assumptions on the slide 7 here. For the 2026 budget, we put a 5% placeholder in for a pay plan adjustment that'll take effect on 10/1. Again, we'll wait board direction before finalizing this. This is just a placeholder. For the number of positions, we had 16 requests from the departments, and the budget currently has 5 new positions allocated, which has a total dollar impact of roughly $400,000 when you factor in salary and benefits. Again, we'll wait direction from the board and also see how the year progresses to see if there's an opportunity for mid-year adjustments and revisit at that time. In total, after factoring in the new positions, full-time equivalents would be 439 in 2026. Any questions on personnel? Okay. So on slide 8 here, we bring everything together and show a snapshot of our key metrics. So at the top of the page, you can see the passengers and landed weight that we discussed at the beginning. The next line down, we show airline revenue, which is projected to be up by $11.6 million or 11.4%. So the primary reason for this is due to the increase in the debt service that you can see 4 lines down. So as we project annual debt service to increase to $75 million in 2026. So we plan to be in the bond market in the spring of 26 as we raise the additional capital for Concourse E, as well as the funds needed to complete Terminal Expansion Phase 1. So if we go back to revenues, middle of the page there, non-airline revenue is expected to be flat at just shy of $100 million. We expect increases in parking, ground transportation, investment income, and various other revenue accounts. but these increases are offset by decreases in rental cars and some of our terminal concessions that I mentioned earlier about we talked to one of our rental car companies. The rental car activity at RSW is about the same as the prior year, but they've slashed prices, which has a lot to do with the inventory of cars in the market. Their prices were much higher a year or two ago as there was a shortage of vehicles. Our 2025 budget didn't anticipate those prices coming down, so we're making that adjustment for the 2026 budget. And as I mentioned earlier, terminal concessions is expected to be down as we'll have at least 4 stores closed due to continued construction on terminal expansion phase 1. So on the next 2 lines, we show personnel and operating expenses, which we discussed earlier in the presentation. And then we show our net revenues of just over $100 million in the middle of the page. And after backing out our annual debt service and project amortizations, we arrive at net funds of $23.6 million. Our 70% share per our airline use and lease agreement is $16.5 million, which we either put into reserve or we put towards our various capital projects, which I'll discuss shortly at the end of the presentation. At the bottom of the screen, you can see our key metrics that we budget around. So CPE, or cost per plane passenger, is increasing to $14.05. So this is the cost to the airlines that operate our airport. It's the total amount that we collect from them in a year divided by their outgoing passengers. And this budgeted increase is actually less than the projections that we showed to them. So we don't anticipate any issues when we meet with them in May. Our debt service coverage, second line from the bottom there, is still at a reasonable 1.4 times, which means our net revenues are 142% of our annual debt service. That'll hold steady at 1.4 times for the foreseeable future. Or above that, as that was what was negotiated with the airlines before we began construction on Concourse E. And then the last metric at the bottom of the page is days cash on hand. It's holding steady at a projected 752 days. And we try to keep at least 700 days or roughly 2 years worth of operating expense in reserve. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay, on slide 9, we show a snapshot of Page Field's budget for next year. Fuel sales are the primary revenue source at Page, and they're having a great year so far, and they're well over budgets on their fuel sales. So at the top, you can see total gallons sold for next year's budget is 2.4 million gallons, which is 150,000 gallons or 6.6% more than the 2025 budget. And as you go down the page, you'll see total fuel sales is down, but that's because we're projecting about $1 less per gallon compared to the prior year. But if you look at the overall net fuel sales in the middle of the page, it's budgeted to be up $387,000 or 8.81%. So all in all, Page is scheduled for a good year. The new South Quad T hangars are opened up and we'll recognize a full year's worth of revenue. So in total, we're looking at a surplus of $2.5 million, which is a $95,000 or 4% increase over the prior year's budget. Any questions on Page?
Questions?
All right, so moving on from the operating budgets, I'll go over the highlights of the 2026 capital budget. So on slide 11 here, we show the funding for our 5-year CIP. We use a similar slide to this when we present to our bond rating agencies, just to give an idea of what's ahead and how to fund our projects. So we have an estimated spend of roughly $1.4 billion from 2026 to 2030, with a bulk of those funds being spent in the next couple years on terminal expansion phase 1 and Concourse E. We plan to be in the bond market again in the spring of 26 to raise the additional funds for Concourse E and terminal expansion phase 1. And those future bonds make up the majority of the $1.4 billion in the funding sources you see up on the screen. Again, we'll come back to you with a couple more times over the next 12 months to discuss raising the additional capital for these projects. We also will have a small bond refunding of roughly $33 million planned for our Series 2015 bonds, and we hope to bring that to you in late summer or early fall. So this is my final slide, and on here we show our 2026 capital budget. So we're shifting from showing, last slide I just showed our 5-year CIP, now we're just showing the 2026 portion. So in the yellow box there, you can see the projected cost for 2026, which is $660 million in total. Again, the majority of these costs are terminal expansion phase 1, Concourse E, and the public safety building. There's roughly 33 projects, and one-time capital purchases in the 2026 budget. Roughly a third of these are active projects, which are already under construction, design, or conceptual design phase. Some examples, other than the terminal expansion phase 1 and Concourse E, are the design of the runway rehab, design of upgrades to our existing baggage handling system, and the design of our rental car service facility and parking expansion project. So those are just a few examples of our multi-year projects. It's also important to note that the budgeted figures on the screen are just placeholders and are dependent on affordability, scope, and priority, among other considerations. So just to give an example, we may have an expensive vehicle or a parking lot expansion that's just a placeholder in there right now that's included in the 660. But the vehicle or that project may not be purchased or proceed. We may not proceed with it if we don't line up the necessary funding, or if the planned cost of a higher priority project, like the runway rehab, came in at a higher estimate. So the last thing I'll mention is that we are just presenting what's in the capital budget as a placeholder. If a new individual project or purchase is selected to proceed, it'll be brought to the board for approval at a future date. So that was my last slide. Again, this is just a workshop to get your feedback. So there's nothing to vote on today. I'll be in front of you again in June for approval of the budget. And so with that, are there any questions?
Great, thank you. Great presentation. Board, any questions or comments?
I mean, Mr. Vice Chair, I'll just share that I think it was a very straightforward presentation. Hard to be upset about surpluses at both RSW and Page Field. And then, of course, when you look at the growth that we are experiencing and have experienced for years, to look at the capital plan and the projects that are planned. I mean, again, it seems like we're growing. We're continuing to see good fiscal responsibility and surpluses. I like what you guys did with going back to the budget this year and trying to find cost savings. Thank you very much for that. I'm looking forward to doing that on the county side. And so, yeah, again, I just thank you for, I think, very solid budget. Hard to find any fault with it.
Great, thank you. I have a question. Obviously, fuel cells is great. We see increased traffic at Page Field. Is it also because of the hangar projects we've been out there, where we have more hangar access now, we have more activity at Page Field? Is that contributing to that?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think it's a combination of items. Scott, one I'll attribute to Scott and his team. Going back to what was quickly referenced earlier, we have an award-winning now. If you look at base ops, top 5% FBOs in the country. If you look at the newest award, first time ever winning, #1 FBO and #1 independent FBO by Professional Pilot Magazine. The people flying the planes think that Scott Sheets and his team have the best FBO in the country. What does that mean? Sorry to our friends in Naples, they put a nice thing on Facebook that they're in the top as well, but not quite as top as #1.
Right.
So that would be a first reason why fuel
And
cells
our neighbors
are
are not complaining about the being there either.
Yeah, that's right. The other thing is, as the county builds back, more of the homes are coming online, more visitors are coming to their houses or to visit. The Edison Awards brings people in. So the hangars, as those come online, that's 81 more people that can bring their planes down. We're working on corporate and individual hangars as well. All of those add up to more fuel. And it's also, as people realize that there are alternatives to other local airports, the product that they are receiving at Page Field, at base ops, is a top-notch product, and people are preferring that, and there are just more people going there, which I think is really great for the community.
I think what we're seeing down in Naples, for example, which is unfortunate because that area grew the last 30 years a lot. So that, obviously residential around the airport. So you're seeing the restrictions they're seeing there. And I think we have perfect opportunity to grow even larger with more expansion of the corporate hangars and for the facility to provide for that relief from Collier County.
Yeah,
Right, Scott?
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, because, there's the one, obviously, some people don't even want the airport there. So we would welcome them to come here. And that's why the hangar project is so important. So.
No, and I will say, just to add, Scott and team have positioned that airport from a long-term standpoint with Emily and her team from a projecting of the future and planning on that last open space of land on the north side, really maximizing the ability to have that revenue stream come in, be it through hangars, through fuel sales. But at the end of the day, people are coming to Page Field because of the customer and guest experience. And that's what sells fuel, because there are options out there. So, it's a great asset to the community.
Okay, thank you. Noel?
I was just kind of curious if staff would maybe give us a little update. I know we've closed several vendors. Some of those vendors were high volume sources of revenue for the airport. How is that going to impact the budget that we have so many of those first floor because of the renovations and so forth that are going to be closed permanently? And once we get the new security check center in place, are people going to be able to come off the street, and if they want to have dinner out the airport or wait for their passengers to come in, how will that all be impacted if they can no longer go through because of the new security changes?
So a couple different things there. So right now, Shula's, the Nathan's Hot Dog, and the sandwich shop Quiznos are closed, as well as the Starbucks. On either side, there is a Dunkin' Donuts. There is the bar area that has introduced grab-and-go food and actually put seating out there. The concession right across from that, Wally's Sandwiches, if you've never been, off of Alico, great sandwiches. They sell hundreds of, probably closer to thousands of sandwiches in the airport a day, grab-and-go. The Dunkin' over on D has switched to 24 hours a day. So the construction, the people here all night long, they were wiping out the vending machines downstairs. So we've created options by being creative. Upstairs, Brian's been working with HMS. If you wander around, there's delineating walls that are in the process of getting painted. Once those are getting painted, on where we can fit, we're doing size and scope. Once everything's done, we'll get a kiosk out there to provide more options. I think as referenced on the slide, there will be a drop short term, but long term, you look at E, once that's done, I think the number Brian gave was $50 million. And then you have everything coming in once that first phase is done, and that part of the food court, I guess it would be on the B side, Downtown House of Pizza, Chick-fil-A. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of stuff over there. So while there's a short-term lag, long-term, the ability for people to have options is going to be vastly different. That's coupled with the presentation Brian gave before with everything that we're flipping. The Starbucks in C is going in line. Not only does that give us more space and customer improvement from a seating standpoint, but it looks consistent across all of the concourses. Key Lime Bistro is coming in. Great American Bagel is expanding. So this next year, I think it's 5 or 6 different concessionaires, food and beverage mix, will be revamped, revitalized. So, the fun fact I think Brian gave before about Fort Myers Brewing, that little shop is number one, right? I know, Chief is still here. We sell the most high five in the Tri-County area, right from that, the airport does. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth, even with those few options, because we're, as part of the plan, speeding up all of those other concessions.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
I have one more comment.
Yes, Randy.
Thank you, Chairman. Following Brian's comments, good news. First off, we're spending a lot of money this year, but I saw on the report in 2026, just in capital improvements, $660 million. You couple that with the economic engine of the airport, which is what really makes this whole region work. Those are numbers that make everybody money in this whole county and the whole region, really. And I just think that's really a positive. That's a lot of money at one place, not counting what the county's doing with growth through the roof. So I think we should get another press release out.
Economic impact press release. I love it.
It's only $8.8 billion, not including Page Field. So
Exactly.
No, I think it's a great presentation. Thanks for going through it with us during this week as well. So we were well prepared today, but a lot of good news. I wanted to also share with the group that I did a quick tour of Phase 2 construction yesterday with the Suffolk team and to see what their progress has been. And they were moving cranes away because they just finished driving 2,200 90-foot-long helical piles out there. And the place looks great. The setup for the runways, everything they've got is spot on. And that's a lot to look forward to. But I mean, when you see the money we owe them next year, it's because they're going to get a lot done. But it looks great. It's so big when you see it in person. You can watch the renderings, right? But when you drive in a truck for 10 minutes to get to the other end, to see how long 14 concourses are, right? To the scope and magnitude of the project is just, it's amazing. It's really impressive. So if you haven't done it yet,
They're keeping a very clean site and so forth too. It's
organized, clean, safe, looks great.
Pete's company's gonna do a great job out there. In this, I think the people drive and come to the airport and they still experience what we have here at RSW, the great experience. They're also gonna see all the construction and they're gonna see that and they're like, okay, well, everything I read's true. This is moving forward. And they don't know there's room in each project, but the point is there's a lot of work going on. And again, thank you to Emily and all their staff and Steve and everything. So keep us moving forward. So, thank you. Any other comments or discussion before we adjourn? No? Okay, we will be adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Yeah, you went there yesterday, huh?
Yeah.